And now on the latest in the Israel-Hamas war, as the head of Hamas's political bureau arrives in Cairo for potential truce talks, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there will be no ceasefire in Gaza until the elimination of Hamas.
מי שחושב שנעצור, פשוט לא מחובר למציאות. לא נפסיק את הלחימה עד להשגת כל המטרות שהצבנו. חיסול החמאס, שחרור חטופינו, והסרת האיום מעזה.
In a recorded video address, the Prime Minister repeated his point that all Hamas members from top to bottom have only two options: surrender or die.
כל מחבלי החמאס, מהראשון עד האחרון, הם בני מוות. יש להם רק שתי אפשרויות, להיכנע או למות.
Netanyahu's statement comes as the United Nations Security Council was expected to vote later on a resolution calling for an urgent and sustainable cessation of hostilities amid reports of discussions on a potential new deal to secure the release of more Israeli hostages held by Hamas. According to the health ministry in Gaza, nearly 20,000 Palestinians have been killed since Israel declared war on Hamas. The United Nations estimates thousands more bodies lie buried under rubble. Bill Raggio is a senior fellow at Foundation for Defense of Democracies and editor of FDD's Long War Journal. Bill is also a terrorism analyst. He's now joining us from Medford, United States. Bill, thank you for making time for us and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
There is a report that has been published by a U.S. think tank known as Institute for the Study of War that Israel could be nearing the final stages of the war by degrading Hamas's North Gaza Brigade. Talk to us about this report. First of all, what do you think about it, and what criteria do you think they used to reach to this conclusion of a near end to this war?
Well, I would disagree that this is a near end of the war. It merely would be they're close to the end of the operation, at least the physical ground operation in northern Gaza. The Israeli aims in this war is the destruction, the political and military arms of Hamas. And in order to accomplish this, Israel must root out Hamas in all of Gaza. So what the Israelis have done is they've segmented Gaza into, it looks like they're going to be doing it into three sections, northern, central, and southern. The northern area has been completely cordoned, and there's some pockets that the Israelis haven't cleared. But that won't mean the end of the war. The Israelis still have to go through and find all of the tunnels and the weapons depots. They have to go through each building and attempt to round up all of the Hamas members. Then they're going to have to do this again in central Gaza and do it again in southern Gaza, unless Hamas decides to surrender unconditionally, its leaders surrender, its fighters lay down their arms and surrender as well. That is the only way that this war will end, or with as the Israeli aims are, the complete destruction of Hamas. So, yeah, we're only talking about here is the, potential end of operations in northern Gaza. There is still a lot of work for the Israelis that needs to be done.
Bill, the United Nations Security Council again delayed Gaza resolution vote as U.S. stalled over language used. And now we have the Hamas chief in Cairo for a possible ceasefire agreement. Which of these two do you think is feasible and could work?
I don't think either of these a ceasefire is feasible, not for the Israelis, not after what they experienced on October 7th. If you put in perspective here in the United States, that would be akin to, say, drug cartels overrunning Texas or Arizona or New Mexico or California and killing 25,000 American citizens. The Israelis cannot accept a ceasefire. A ceasefire is a defeat for the Israeli state, and there will be too much internal political pressure for the Israelis to accept a long-term ceasefire or a truce. That would mean that Hamas essentially has won, that it will survive this war. And again, that is against the aims of the Israeli state. Now, that being said, there's a lot of pressure, political pressure from the international community, and even within the Biden administration, for the Israelis to agree to a ceasefire. I don't believe, at least in the short to midterm, the Israelis are going to agree to this.
Bill, before I let you go, there's a statement that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just made a few hours ago. He says, and I'm going to read the statement to you, that whoever thinks that we will stop is detached from reality. We will not stop the fighting until all of the goals that we have set are achieved: the elimination of Hamas, the release of our hostages, and the removal of the threat from Gaza. Basically, what the Prime Minister is saying, that they will not give any room for a truce. What do you think about the Prime Minister's statement?
Well, that is in line with my thoughts on this. I do agree with him. If the Israeli goal is the destruction of Hamas as a political and military entity in Gaza, that is what needs to be done. Honestly, this is pretty much the easy part for the Israelis. It's what happens next. What happens when Hamas is cleared? And then who is going to administer Gaza? Who's going to provide security? Who's going to keep terrorist groups from springing back up? Is the Israelis going to conduct an occupation and do it themselves, or will this be done by the international community? Netanyahu's comments, are consistent with the strategy of the destruction of Hamas. That's why the Israelis would be, if that is their goal, they need to stay away from any ideas of a ceasefire. Hamas started this war. If it doesn't like what's happening to the people in Palestine, then it can easily end this war by surrendering unconditionally.
All right, I've been talking to Bill Raggio, who is a senior fellow at Foundation for Defense of Democracies and editor of FDD's Long War Journal. Bill, thank you for talking to us today.
Thank you very much, sir. It's a pleasure.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.